Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Dan Moulthrop, CEO here at the City Club of Cleveland. For 101 years, we've been at the heart of the city, convening conversations about community issues. And so it makes a great deal of sense that today, with our partners at the Downtown Cleveland Alliance and the Northeast Ohio Sustainable Communities Consortium, we convene a conversation about the state of downtown. Last September, Bruce Katz of the Brookings Institution spoke here about the role of metro regions, the role they are increasingly playing in solving the problems we all face. He argued that collectively, cities and their suburbs are powerful economic engines and sometimes more effective than federal and state governments. Central to the success of those metro regions are strong core cities with vibrant downtowns. And that's more or less why all of this matters. I expect our panelists will have a lot more to say about why downtown matters, but rather than say it for them, I'll introduce our moderator. And Jason Russell is going to introduce our panelists and get the conversation going. If you don't know Jason, he is a planner in the city of Lakewood, a former volunteer city advocate for the Downtown Cleveland Alliance, and a great lover of all things urban. He's a graduate of the Maxine Goodman Levin College of Urban Affairs at Cleveland State University, and he's also a former colleague of mine, one of the best I've worked with. So, for more than 2 years, he was a project director and a lead experimenter at the Civic Commons, which was a civic-minded social media startup that's now a project of IdeaStream. Ladies and gentlemen, Jason Russell.
Thank you very much and good afternoon. It's my esteemed opportunity to introduce our panelists here. And we have three very intelligent individuals who know all about downtown Cleveland and downtowns internationally as well, with Tamara on the end. But first, I want to introduce Joe Marinucci. We know him as our president and CEO of Downtown Cleveland Alliance, which is our organization in downtown, and it's really focused on bringing individuals downtown to work, play, and recreate. Second, we have Hunter Morrison, who has recently served as director of the Northeast Ohio Sustainable Communities Consortium, otherwise known as NEOSIC for short, or NEO-SEC. But even before that, he reminded me beforehand that he was the planning director of the city of Cleveland before I was even born, and for almost as long as I've been alive. So thank you, Hunter. And lastly, but not least, certainly, is Tamara Zahn. She is the former president of Downtown Indianapolis, so very similar to our Downtown Cleveland Alliance that we have here in Cleveland. But she currently serves as the chair-elect of the International, she is the chair of the International Downtown Alliance, which serves as sort of an international alliance that helps the thought leader for other organizations who are focused on revitalizing downtowns. So to start things off, I want to give it to Joe. Joe, my first question to you is sort of, what is the state of downtown and what are some of the things we can expect moving forward?
Well, thank you, Jason, and thank you for joining us. And again, very pleased that you obviously were a former city advocate, a graduate, and we appreciate your passion about downtowns and in particular downtown Cleveland. All of you who came in have received an annual report, which reflects the performance in downtown Cleveland in 2013. As you page through that report, I think you'll see a number of things. One, the residential market remains very, very vibrant in downtown Cleveland. We have 12,000 people that now call downtown Cleveland home. Last year, we absorbed about 800 units, surprisingly, without any real blip at all in terms of the occupancy levels, which are 95% currently. Right now, we have about 1,100 units under construction, and we hope to be close to 14,000 residents in downtown, probably within 18 months. So one, the residential momentum continues and remains very, very vibrant. Secondly, the office market has shown great improvement over the last year, and in particular over the last 2.5 years. There have been 20 companies that moved into downtown Cleveland, bringing about 2,000 additional jobs into downtown, and obviously the relationship between jobs and residents is vitally important. But our business development center has been very active in not only attracting new business into downtown, but working with our current business community that exists here. We work very closely with the commercial brokerage community, and right now the office vacancy factor in downtown Cleveland for A and B space is about 18.2%. And if you think back, we peaked at about 23+%, and not too long ago, about 3 years ago. So we've seen improvement in that sector, and again, that's vitally important. Now, that's not to say that we don't have significant vacancies in some of our B and C buildings. We understand that that's the case. But we're also seeing the continuation of the adaptive reuse strategy that takes buildings that are probably not viable as commercial spaces and are transforming those into other uses, and in particular housing. The residences at the Hannah, for example, a great example of that. East Ohio being transformed as we speak into an apartment building, the old East Ohio building at 9th and Euclid. And in addition, others that are being in that process going through that same type of revitalization. So when you step back and look at the things that are happening in downtown Cleveland, we've got great momentum, and I think our challenge going forward is going to be how do we maintain that momentum? How do we make sure the next group of projects, and we're no longer in the big box phase, as Hunter likes to say. We've completed the convention center, we completed some major investments. Now the opportunity is how we can incrementally connect the major investments that we've created. And again, I'll be talking a little bit more, hopefully through the Q&A, about some of those initiatives as we go forward.
Sure. Well, that's an interesting segue you had there, because Hunter, you were the planning director in sort of our quote-unquote last downtown renaissance in the early 90s, where we built the sports facilities, and so that was going to be sort of our momentum. And Tamara, I have a follow-up too with this, but how do we, now that we have the big box phase complete, how do we make those connections so that everything sort of fuses together and we can bring on those smaller projects that really makes downtown a unique place to be?
Well, the first thing I would say is when we did the downtown plan back in the late 80s, early 90s, we never anticipated in any of our projections the residential development. I mean, yeah, it would be nice, but that's been the big change. I think there's a progression of activities. We've gone from being a commercial center in the late part of the 20th century with the department stores and the office buildings, to really focusing in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s on the big boxes, the big attractions, the Playhouse Square, the Gateway, the stadium, and finally the convention center. Frankly, you only do that once every couple of generations, so there's no more big boxes to build, right? But they've also done their job. They've repositioned downtown as a regional draw for entertainment and education, and people continue to come. But what we're also seeing, and it's partly a generational shift, and it's partly a post-2008 shift in terms of what people are looking for, is that this is now a draw as a neighborhood. And we need to understand the opportunity, but also the challenge of converting our thinking to a much finer grain. And many of the things that Joe's and his group are working on are really going to that next level, to deal with the details at the street, to deal with the experience as you come in, to deal with how you handle the crowd after the St. Patrick's Day, so you 6 hours later you can't find anything, any evidence of that. It's that sort of attention to detail that makes this an attractive place. But also understand that that's what's going on around the country. That people are gravitating towards places like our downtown, and we have an opportunity in Cleveland, not only for the downtown, but for the city of Cleveland, because downtown Cleveland is, and the near surrounding neighborhoods are the most successful neighborhoods that we have in the city. Mm-hmm. But it's also important for the region, because this is the region's only downtown. The downtown Akron, downtown Canton, and downtown Youngstown are showing some signs of rebirth, and in particular in Akron and Youngstown around the universities. But this is the one place that is drawing people, drawing talent from around the region, people who choose to live here. Can you capitalize on that? Because we're getting the migrants to the knowledge economy drawn to this place because of the qualities in this place, and there's no other place like this in this region. Mm-hmm.
You know, and Tamara, sort of a follow-up, if you could wear two hats right now, mm-hmm. because Indianapolis went through a more recent phase than us of building the big boxes with the new convention center, well, the expansion, and then the new sports stadiums. Right. So how did you guys make those connections? And also, how are you seeing downtowns nationally making the jump to make downtown more of a residential neighborhood versus a commercial hub?
Great. I had the pleasure to be the downtown practitioner, like Joe, for 20 years in downtown Indianapolis. So we went through a lot of changes. But one of the kind of the value propositions we always kept in mind, and mostly that came about from the 20 years previous that I had worked in a lot of downtowns, is we needed to always be important and relevant and add value to our own residents. And if our residents didn't want to come and enjoy Indianapolis and downtown Indianapolis, then we didn't think we would have value to visitors. So underlying all of that is we wanted to bring value, and ultimately we wanted people to live downtown. That was the real bar that we set for our success. Fortunately, we have a very attractive downtown in Indianapolis from a visitor's perspective, and we have a very robust convention and visitor traffic, which is incredibly relevant to giving us an offering of restaurants and services in downtown. But as you noted, as our downtown residential base grew, because of the trends of what we're seeing, then the needs and the demands of our downtown residents started to become more pronounced. And so we in Indianapolis have just recently gone through our own planning process, and it came out very strongly that it's very important looking forward to be, we've always called downtown everybody's neighborhood. It's where everybody comes together. But more importantly, it was time to double back and think about how we continue to grow our downtown for our own residents.
Now, following up with that, Joe, what are some of the things that the Downtown Cleveland Alliance is helping spearhead to sort of build those amenities that attract and retain residents in downtown Cleveland?
Well, one, we recognize obviously that some of the current initiatives, for example, the Group Plan Commission, Tony Coyne, who's chairing that initiative, is here with us today, are very, very important. Creating the public spaces, the public realm, if you will, that is attractive not only to residents, but also to employees and people who are visiting the city. And we know that if we make those types of investments, that it will pay off economically across a broad spectrum. For example, Perk Plaza over at Chester Commons is a great example of that. It's no, I think, accident that the epicenter of a lot of our job creation has occurred surrounding that public park. And if you look, it's a great way to animate not only the space, it's a beautiful space. We worked with Land Studio, who was the design leader in putting that park together. But the reality is a number of tenants have moved into that immediate vicinity. A number of the residential conversions that we're talking about have moved into that area. So we know if we make those investments as a community, we'll attract additional residents, we'll attract additional tenants and value for downtown. In addition, we've started a visioning and a tactical planning process in downtown called Step Up Downtown. I hope many of you have heard about it. It's a process that recognizes that we've made a lot of great investments in downtown, but in many ways, we haven't connected those investments as appropriately or as aggressively as we can. And going back to Tamara's point, we need to make sure that the pedestrian experience between those points are as vibrant as the locations themselves. So we engaged with a consultant team. Actually, the Kent State Design team, I think, is here. And the effort is being actually chaired by Eric Lipser, a member of our board. But again, the strategy is to identify what those nodes of opportunities are, help the community to think through a process of prioritizing them, and then actually work on an implementation strategy where the Alliance can work with our strategic partners, whether it's the City of Cleveland, and I'm glad Joe Sipperman and Kevin Kelly are here from Council, or other strategic actors who then can help us achieve those goals. So again, it's a very vibrant process and one that we hope to continue to engage the community over the next few months.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I think one thing, it's great to talk about the details and on-the-ground stuff, but if we take a step back, and I think, Hunter, you can provide sort of, why does this improvements in downtown matter for our region? Like, what can we do to make downtown a regional asset that builds up the entire region?
Well, again, I think it's fair to say that that downtown Cleveland is the region's downtown. Mm-hmm. Back in the day, when Akron had 2 department stores and Youngstown had 2 department stores and Cleveland had, I think, what, about 6, Joe? Yeah. It was possible to find the sort of nightlife and the opportunities closer to home. But even then, people would come from Youngstown to shop in Cleveland because the best stuff was here. Yeah. This is the one place that is sort of the brand for the region. Again, it does, I think, draw talent, but it also retains talent in the region. I can give you anecdotal cases of kids in Youngstown and Akron that I've known that have said, well, if I can't find a place and a job in Cleveland, I'm out of here. Mm-hmm. It's the one place that's going to keep some of our talent here. It is also the draw and the place of innovation that we're seeing, because again, the talent pool that exists here. Mm-hmm. So I think this is a key thing, and much of our work has been focused on how do you connect the region, how do you reconnect it. One of our recommendations in the Vibrant Neo on the transportation side is to connect the region more closely from our major centers. So it's possible to get from Akron to Cleveland and Cleveland to Akron to create strong nodes of employment and to connect those dots across the region, because it's critical not only that you have a center of excellence here, but that you make that accessible and convenient to the rest of the region.
Excellent.
Jason, I'd like to add to that. Downtowns really do matter, and I probably am singing to the choir here, but it's the heart and soul of our community. But even more tangibly than that, International Downtown Association recently completed some research, and of the 150 largest cities, they contain 1/3 of the wage and salary jobs in our country. So they're an economic engine, and they are the jobs and the businesses that keep our communities going.
Excellent. Now, Tamara, you had talked about Indianapolis making sort of that transition to a residential neighborhood. What are some of the amenities? Because very much you're a Midwestern town. We have Public Square as the center of our town. You have Monument Circle, which is like sort of the heart and center of downtown Indianapolis. So how have you enhanced those amenities for residents, and what are some of the other things that you've added?
Well, I would say it's a work in progress. It's definitely the job ahead as much as behind us. But I think there's some trends that we're paying attention to. One, our populations are getting not only older but younger. Right. And the much sought after millennials actually prefer urban lifestyles. And many of our baby boomers are downsizing and thinking about aging in place, and are doing that in downtown condos. So we know that people like gathering spaces. That's the value of downtowns. And so we're taking a look at how the spaces, how people gather, both informally and formally. We've created some new public spaces. Everybody's very interested in more walkability and bikeability. So we just completed in Indianapolis, it was really a game changer, a really bold transformation, an 8-mile Indianapolis Cultural Trail, which is a legacy of Gene and Marilyn Glick. It's 8 miles. It's a beautiful, dedicated walking bike path that circles around downtown and connects our cultural districts, all of our cultural amenities, as well as our neighborhoods. And it's a game changer. It actually took a lane out of traffic, which, in the old days, we would design streets to get cars in and out fast. And now, because everyone's realizing the importance of walking and biking for healthier lifestyles, this is really changing the way downtown works. We are launching, the Cultural Trail team is launching a bike share program later in April. And there's just been a lot more focus on how do we get people out into our streets, our sidewalks, our public spaces, and connecting with each other and being active.
Excellent. Since I work for a city, part of my thinking all the time is, okay, with these great things going on in the nonprofit and private sector, how can the government sort of help and foster those things? And obviously, Indianapolis is a very unique situation. You have what they call the uni-government, where
Absolutely.
The city and county are consolidated. And a couple years ago, with our casino revenue, there was this debate in the county of should the investments be spread across the county or should they be centered downtown? And I just, from your perspective of being in Indianapolis, how would that conversation play out there, where individuals are electing, I guess let's take a step back. In Indianapolis, you can elect a city-county council, so that individuals who live outside of the quote-unquote historical boundaries of Indianapolis actually vote for a council member that would represent within the city, and the mayor of Indianapolis too, which is for the county. So back to my original question, how would that play out in Indianapolis in terms of spreading revenue throughout the whole county area versus the downtown area? And what are some of the things that we can learn to say, downtown is very important for everyone and this is why we should invest there?
Well, I don't want to underestimate that dialogue goes on very robustly in Indianapolis still. So in fairness to our counselors here, we haven't quite figured it all out.
Okay.
But I think one thing that we have going for us in Indianapolis is we have a series of mayors, starting with Mayor Lugar, that really understood the value and the importance of a healthy downtown, and did make a commitment through our 4 mayors since then to continue to invest in downtown, understanding that if downtown isn't healthy, the whole community can't be healthy. And it's kind of like the rising tide for a boat. So we have had that dialogue on an ongoing basis, and again, continually tried to build our downtown And it's, again, I won't say it's perfect, but tried to build our downtown so that everybody felt welcome and everybody could be part of the value of downtown and the fun and the benefits of downtown. You know, it's an ongoing process.
Sure, sure. And I think we've been fortunate as well to have the investment in downtown with County Executive Fitzgerald and the mayor sort of setting priorities for downtown and things we're going to invest in to bring back our
Yeah, to that point, they really have come together, both in terms of a dialogue on the casino revenues. Obviously, the county has made a decision to use those revenues exclusively for a 2-year threshold, and then potentially still have opportunities after that, but open it up to some of the suburban projects that may need to be considered. But from our perspective, again, the city and county have worked very, very well. A great example of that is, again, not only the work of the Group Plan Commission, but the announcement surrounding the Hilton Hotel, the new convention center hotel, where, in essence, the mayor and the county executive came together and talked about the importance of that investment and how it would leverage additional investment in downtown.
Right. So Tamara, I hear you saying we're on the right track.
Well, the other thing is the employment center. I mean, it's hard to dispute the number of jobs that are in the downtown employment centers. So.
Absolutely.
And by the way, Jason, just to dovetail the International Downtown Association study, we have 125,000 people that commute into downtown Cleveland every day. To give you some sense, it's the largest employment center in the state of Ohio.
Absolutely. Well, one thing I keep drinking here is water, so let's talk about water. A lot of people who are a lot of people who are visiting Cleveland or have been here a long time know that we have a beautiful asset of Lake Erie. It's frozen for, it seems like forever now, but we are really working, and we've been talking about it for a long time, but I think we're finally got that momentum where we're starting to connect to our river and our waterfront. So Hunter and Joe, if you want to talk about how we're making progress towards that goal.
Well, a couple of things to note. Obviously, the city of Cleveland, through the leadership of the mayor and council, have announced they've chosen a developer for the lakefront. The Trammell Crow Group and Cumberland Development locally will join forces and will really look to not only develop what we traditionally have called North Coast Harbor with some development parcels there, but also the parcels north of Brown Stadium. And at least from some of the preliminary dialogue, it looks like some of the early concentration will be surrounding North Coast Harbor, and then some latter concentration in terms of the parcels north of the stadium. When you overlay that, the fact that the Geist Companies also is looking at the about 25 acres surrounding Burke Airport and potentially developing those sites, we now have two strong development entities that we can work with on a day-to-day basis in order to move some of those projects forward. So again, in collaboration with the city and their leadership, I think we now at that threshold where we can begin to actively talk about how we touch the lake and do so in a way that not only brings investment, but also animates it for our residents. One of the things I'd also share is Downtown Cleveland Alliance is working with the city through the Ports Division, and we now provide clean and safe services to North Coast Harbor. We also are providing marketing and event services. So, for example, this coming summer, I think we'll have about 50 events in addition to some of the produced events by outside producers at North Coast Harbor. For example, yoga every Tuesday night. So for those of you that enjoy yoga, you'll be able to come down and enjoy that.
Are you going to be there, Joe?
No, my daughter will be.
I was going to go if you were.
I thought you were going to ask Hunter that.
No, you look like the Buddha.
Yeah.
All right, we've digressed. So, Tamara, is there any experiences of activating Indianapolis' waterfront with your river through there? Or?
Yes, absolutely. We have a pretty big community initiative right now called Reconnecting Our Waterways. So it's not only our riverfront, but the rivers fronts and the canals that go throughout all of our communities. So again, sometimes I think we as Midwestern cities and industrial cities turned our back on what was an incredibly important natural asset. And so going forward, we're trying to reclaim that space and make it not only a recreational area, but a place for people to enjoy.
And from a regional perspective, it's important again to see downtown as a draw, but as a place people want to get to. We spent the last 25 or 30 years, and a number of people in the room, like Tim Donovan and Tom Yablonsky, had worked on this tirelessly to connect along the entire Cuyahoga River from Zoar to Cleveland. Making that connection is important because as we've gone around the region, what we find is people want to get to two places. They want to get to the national park and they want to get to the lakefront. And as we've had meetings throughout the region, we keep hearing the same thing. So connecting our communities, connecting those draws, focused on water, focused on our rivers, not only the Cuyahoga, but also the Black and the Grand and the other rivers. Learning from Cleveland about how to convert industrial waterfronts into places that have a broader attraction, residential. The flats development is a great example. But how do we connect with the Jet Express, for instance, from Lorain to Cleveland? How do we connect to Ashtabula? How do we see this as a network? How do we look across the lakefront and ask the question, if we can go along the river, it took a long time, a generation, to connect. Why can't we go from Lorain to Ashtabula along the lake? There's a lot of small details, but all of that adds up to an opportunity to connect Cleveland to the rest of the region, ultimately to Pittsburgh, ultimately to Washington, ultimately to Chicago on bikeways and pathways and trails, linking and leveraging the assets we have as the region. So if I'd say anything to the group here, it's important to focus on downtown, but it's also important to see this as a draw for the rest of the region and continue to ask the question, how do we bring more people to the table? Sure. How do we bring more people to the party? They want to get here. That's what we've heard across the region. They want to get here. The animosity about, no, we go up to the Browns, we go up to the Indians. This is Brownstown, except perhaps the Mahoning Valley, which is still part of the Steelers Nation. Right. You can bring them in, but you got to connect them to the place.
Sure.
And I will tell you, having lived out in Youngstown, the number of people that are up to downtown Cleveland, to Playhouse Square, but also to Severance, to come to events here. This is a regional anchor. It's part of the regional amenity package that keeps people in Northeast Ohio. So, if anything, you've got to think small, Joe, but you also have to understand, I think, as a group, how important this is to making the rest of the region work.
And just to add to that connectivity dialogue, which I think is very important, the city of Cleveland, again, this summer will be opening a transient marina at North Coast Harbor, and for the first time now boaters can actually come and dock and hopefully enjoy the city through that mechanism. And I also point out there was a great announcement very recently by the state of Ohio through the Capitol Bill project to provide funding for the pedestrian bridge that will connect North Coast Harbor to the malls. And again, a very important connection for us.
So thinking this through multimodally, thinking about, well, how do people who are transienting across the Great Lakes from Chicago to Buffalo, where do they dock at night? Well, we haven't been able to. We identified that problem many years ago, and it's a critical way of drawing that piece of the puzzle. How do we get bikers, bicyclists, people on tour? How do we link our Underground Railroad sites, which we have in Cleveland and in Ashtabula? How do we create those trail experiences for the region? Because people want to come here. Having come here, they want to see the rest of the region. How do we do this? So what you're doing here, viewed in that broad context, this is the anchor in many ways.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you brought up the idea of alternative transportation, because if we're trying to connect our sort of urban centers within Northeast Ohio to downtown Cleveland, it's great. I would love to take some sort of transportation to downtown, but once I get there, how do I get around to the places that I need to get to? And having an alternative transportation, perhaps a bike share, years down the road, I know we're studying the possibility of something like that. At least for my generation, if I can get to the downtown and then I can ride a bike the rest of the way.
Exactly. I mean, for alternative transportation to work, it has to be a seamless experience. That's where I was out in Portland years ago, talking to the folks there, and if you're really going to come into downtown Portland from the suburbs on a train and get around, you also have to have access to a car when you need it. So the zip cars, the other modes, you really have to think of the whole experience and think about it seamlessly and in a very integrated way. So it's possible to get around without an automobile. You're encouraged to do that. It's a level of thinking that I think we have yet to master anywhere in Northeast Ohio, but the opportunity is there.
Right. Well, and I think from an equity standpoint too, providing those other forms of transportation, because we can't assume everyone has a car, because an automobile is still a luxury. And we don't often think of it that way, but it is. But if we provide opportunities for all, then it creates a really great comprehensive downtown for everyone.
Yes.
And I don't want to leave this conversation without talking about walkability, because I think that's what downtowns always bring to the table. Is we're in Cleveland, scores very well as a very walkable downtown, and we know residents like to walk, visitors like to walk if it's interesting and if it's clean and safe, and if it's beautiful. So continuing to think about our downtowns as walkable and making it connected and fun to walk is important too.
Excellent.
I'm back momentarily. Today, the City Club of Cleveland, we're enjoying a panel conversation about the state of downtown. We're going to return to the panel momentarily for our traditional City Club question and answer period. We encourage you all to formulate your questions for our speakers now and remind you that your questions should be brief and to the point. And while I know there are no small number of boosters in the room, I know this panel is fully prepared to handle challenging questions. Joe? No? Okay. We welcome all of you here and those joining us through our primary media partner, 90.3 WCPN, 104.9 WCLV, and WVIZ PBS Idea Stream, or WTAM, or many of the other radio stations that carry our programs. Our live webcast is supported by the University of Akron. You're all invited to join us here on Friday, March 28th. The City Club welcomes Dr. Ron Berkman, president of Cleveland State University. For more information about that program or any of our upcoming forums, we encourage you to visit us online at cityclub.org. Today we also welcome guests at tables hosted by Baker Hostetler, the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Cleveland Convention Center, Colliers International, Downtown Cleveland Alliance, Fairmount Properties, Gateway and Warehouse Districts, JLL, Landmark RE Management, the Millennia Company, Ohio City, Inc., PNC Bank, and Richard Bowen and Associates. Today's program is also made possible by our community partner, the Downtown Cleveland Alliance, and we thank you very much for your support. Today's program is also the George S. Dively Memorial Forum on Cleveland's Tomorrow, made possible through a generous gift to our endowment from the George S. Dively Foundation in memory of Mr. Dively. Can we get a round of applause, please? Now we'd like to return to the panel for our traditional City Club Q&A. We welcome questions, as I said, from everyone, including guests. Holding our microphones today are Kirsten Pianka, our Marketing and Outreach Specialist, and Program Director Carrie Miller. Oh, right here. There you go. Who's got the first question?
Hi, my name is Christina Skovsgaard. I've grown up and I'm a Clevelander. And for the last 5 years, I've been a resident in downtown, and my husband and I just really love it. We're in the Warehouse District. And my question to you is there any more plans of putting up high-rise buildings along the lakefront? Because I think that is a huge mistake. Because it's blocking what should be accessible to everyone.
Well, I guess I'll take that one, Jason.
Go ahead, Joe.
Cleveland is one of the few cities in the world, major cities that still has space. So we don't really have to go up, especially along the way.
Well, at this point, again, I'm not familiar, if you're thinking of North Coast Harbor and the lakefront as it relates to the areas surrounding First Energy Stadium. I'm not quite certain exactly what some of the height considerations will be at those locations. To be honest with you, that site is somewhat constricted from a height perspective because of Burke Lakefront Airport, and you really can't pierce the approach cones as a result of that. So my guess is that we're going to probably see moderately sized buildings there. Now, I think everyone in the room knows that Fairmount Properties, along with the Wilstein family, are going to be doing phase 2 of the Flats East Bank project, and that will have a residential phase, and that would have a mid-sized two residential towers as part of that. And I think if you look at it, because of the grade differential, I think you'll still have plenty of view quarters available both to the lake as well as to the river. So I think you're absolutely right. I think we have to be cognizant of that. But I do think at this point, I think we're doing a pretty good job balancing those particular needs.
Question over here.
Good afternoon. My name is Tellian J. Thomas. I used to be a resident of downtown in the early 2000s and then moved over to Detroit Shoreway area. The panel has used the word connectivity several times, and so for me, that raised a question around diversity, inclusion, and equity. And so I was wondering if you could speak to how diversity, inclusion, and equity has been considered in the development of downtown thus far, where there are opportunities for improvement, and how do we ensure that downtown really is a place and a space that is available and accessible and affordable for everyone who calls this region in Cleveland home.
Who wants to take that one? Hunter? Joe?
You want to start?
No, I think it's yours.
First of all, respect your question a great deal, and we recognize the need to have diversity in terms of the residential base as well as the employment opportunities in downtown Cleveland. Right now, I think there's a lot of good thought going into how do we create some new products that would be affordable, to be frank, for a wide range of the population. I'll give you an example. The Geist Companies is actually building 1010 Euclid, the residential conversion there, and they will have studio apartments that they're specifically going to market to their employees within the hospitality sector of that complex. So again, I think we're going to be working with our development community to begin thinking about that very proactively. And I would say this, that there is a significant number of subsidized buildings, subsidized housing in downtown Cleveland. We work very closely with Bone Tower, Witten Place. John Furchel, our board chairman here, is the owner of that project. We work very closely with those buildings as well, and we coordinate many of the services that we provide through our Clean and Safe program to the residents of those buildings. So again, we're cognizant of that and really looking to maximize their presence in downtown Cleveland.
One other way to think about the challenge of equity and inclusion is to not define downtown too tightly, but to understand that the downtown really goes out probably to 55th Street on the east side and probably over to 65th Street on the west side. Clearly, the impact of downtown is having, as an employment center, has had a beneficial effect on the neighborhoods immediately around it in terms of stabilizing them. They're well connected by public transit today. Can they be better connected? Are they connected by bike and other modes? Not really. The pedestrian connections have not been as good as they need to be, though the connections across the river have helped. But to understand that the downtown as an employment center, as an entertainment center, really has a reach further out. And to look with RTA in particular at how to make it possible for people to get access to jobs. One of the things we've been studying at the Northeast Ohio Sustainable Communities Consortium is job accessibility, not from the workforce development side, but from the question of how does somebody get to the job. I was just yesterday with the chief assistant of the mayor of Gary, and the same issue. The increasing isolation of people from employment opportunities across Northeast Ohio is a serious issue. To the degree that we have employment opportunities concentrated in downtown, concentrated in University Circle, concentrated along the Euclid Corridor, and accessible to the region and particularly to the near-end neighborhoods of the city of Cleveland, you've solved the problem. We continue to disperse jobs away and don't focus on the connections, then we're missing the boat. We have a remarkable asset in Cleveland for stabilizing and attracting population in GCRTA. It is the best system in the region. It is well financed. It has a robust system. Across the region, we find 8,000 acres of vacant commercial and industrial zoned land within walking distance of good transit lines. That's going out those corridors, out the St. Clair corridor, out Kinsman, out Central, out Lorraine. How do we rebuild those? So the concept of downtown is really the concept of a center city where people can walk to work, can walk to shop, can get on a bus. And if you go to Portland, where my brother lives, 55 blocks away from downtown, you can get around, you can walk to downtown, and you can take a bus to downtown, and you can get there easily, and it's continuous. So what you're doing here needs to be, again, focused as an anchor to not just the immediate central business district, which is where a lot of the work has been done, but to Center City Cleveland, which historically went out. I mean, the historic first boundaries of the city were 55th Street on the east, and then when we added Ohio City, roughly out to 65th Street. That's the core of our dense, rich, historic city. How do we think about that together with the neighborhoods immediately impacted by and related to the downtown? And I think that opens up a whole different set of discussions. What you see in the home ownership zone in Central, what you see going on now between CMHA and Tri-C and St. Vincent's about building housing that's accessible to people who work there. That's also part of a downtown, if you think about it as a center city investment strategy that makes Cleveland, once again, the vibrant core of the region.
I'd like to just add one thing to that? I think downtowns have a pretty rich history and success rate of diversity, but that said, our population in this country is getting even more diverse in ways that we haven't even contemplated. Age, race, just religion. So I think there's a real opportunity here with the Step Up Downtown, because voices are very important during this process of planning and looking ahead. And so whether it's urbanists, scientists, artists, business folks, this is a great time to come together and share ideas about what you all want your community, your downtown Cleveland to be. And the richer and the more those ideas collide and cross-pollinate and come together in collaboration, that's going to create a downtown that's going to be truly successful for everybody. So I hope everybody's participating in those dialogues and those surveys and those debates.
Good afternoon. I don't want to leave the discussion here without talking about education. And a good example in Cleveland right now in downtown, Campus International School, Cleveland Public School, is the only elementary school with a waiting list. It's in downtown. It's closely affiliated with the Education College at Cleveland State. I want to know about the Downtown Cleveland Alliance's role in looking at these educational issues, whether anything's been done in Indianapolis, because at the end of the day, if we want to keep these millennials in our city, we got to give them a great educational opportunity. Cleveland's got one right now with Campus International, but I want to know if there's a sense of urgency that we embrace this, nurture it, grow it, because that's the future of the town, is educating our kids.
Right.
Tony, totally concur with that assessment. We recognize through the Step Up Downtown process that educational opportunities beginning with preschool all the way through high school are going to be very, very important. Campus International is a great example. We've had dialogue with that group as well as with the campus district about how we maintain and expand. As you know, they're out of space at their current location, so we're working with the campus district to identify an alternative location that hopefully will allow them to grow and prosper. We're also in dialogue with the Cleveland Municipal School District on other opportunities in downtown. And again, from our perspective, we think we need to offer multiple opportunities from an education perspective. And you think back, one of the programs that we looked very closely at, you might recall, is Center City, Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. And part and parcel to their very expansive residential growth was the recognition that they had to tackle that issue. So again, I think you're right on target, and I think all of us need to be cognizant of the fact we need more quality schools in downtown. And again, we hope that this process will help us identify strategically where those should be located and identify roles within the community to help achieve those. Want to talk about Indianapolis?
Yes, my name is Joe Gramps, and I'm a recent downtown resident. After a struggle of about 2 years of trying to sell my condo in the suburbs, I decided to move downtown. And it was definitely one of the best decisions I've ever made. And I frankly don't want to leave. But one of the questions I have is, as far as, you know, there's a lot of new apartments coming online in the next, well, that either already have or will be in the next several months and years. But there's not a whole lot of properties for sale in the downtown region, which, you know, I'd just like you to speak to that a little bit. I love living in the downtown area. I think the accessibility to all the amenities down there is excellent. I looked at, you know, the other neighboring areas, and, you know, decided I wanted to be downtown. And I think if we want to make the city center strong and have, you know, a retail base and things, it can't just be a place where people come in to work, even from the surrounding neighborhoods. There needs to be permanent residents down there, you know, supporting all those other things.
Well, thank you for that question. And again, if you step back and think of the evolution of downtown Cleveland, one of the things that's really true, and it's different, to be frank, than the evolution of downtown Indianapolis, is that we as a community began to look at an aggressive adaptive reuse strategy utilizing federal tax credits, federal conservation easements, and then in the last few years, state historic tax credits. Well, that was a great mechanism for us to deal with, to be frank, market gaps in terms of the rental rates that we were receiving, and allowed us to really push forward a portfolio of housing. And that, I think, is going to continue on the short term. But the reality is, because the limitations of the federal tax credits, those have to be apartment units. They have to be lease units. So we did, I think, before the recession, see some transition occurring. To be frank, the recession kind of stalled some of the transition of those units to for sale products. We're seeing a little bit more activity right now. Right now we have about 1,000 units of for sale housing in downtown, which is not where it needs to be. And we also recognize that we need to transition more towards new construction on that condo product basis. And again, maybe in some of the other areas, for example, the Avenue District stepped in initially to create that type of opportunity. I think we're going to see some additional dialogue along those lines. And again, going back to what Hunter just said as well, we're very cognizant of the relationship with our adjoining neighborhoods and the type of housing that's being created there. And we think, again, we've got a great, if you think about it, if someone lives in Ohio City, we know they're going to spend a lot of their disposable income in downtown Cleveland and vice versa. Right. So the development of Ohio City, of Tremont, of the campus district are all vitally important, and again gives us a rich portfolio, a rich set of options from a housing perspective.
And Tamara, you had mentioned earlier that millennials and baby boomers were trying to age in place and move into downtown condos. How's the housing market been, the mix of housing in downtown Indianapolis been? How's that progressed over time?
We were primarily a rental market, and then increasingly we added for sale product, and it was very, very well received. And we actually switched the allocation. So we were predominantly for sale until the recession, and then that completely stopped. Yep. And our absorption stopped. People couldn't sell their houses in the suburbs, even though they often wanted to be downtown. So that financing became difficult. That became, put a stop on that. And what has come back is a for rental property. So we are now trending very high again in multifamily rental. So time will tell. The other thing that I think is very important, schools are absolutely critical to expand that base of residential, because what we do find is people, when they have children of school age, they are often, if they can't find an acceptable, extraordinary education in downtown, they will leave. But the other thing that we're seeing in some other cities, Vancouver's been very leading, and others are changing the density models of their single family homes and their residential with some smaller types of units, some backyard units, some grandparent units, just being creative about how they look at density and how they look at how we use the very precious asset of land and the demand for residential.
Right. You have a question over here?
Hi, my name is Lisa Hatton, and my question is in reference to the Downtown Cleveland Alliance. And that Hunter mentioned that downtown went from 55th to West 60th.
About 65th.
West 65th. And so my understanding is that the Downtown Cleveland Alliance goes from 18th, East 18th, to that West 65th. Is there a plan to extend that on the east side?
Well, let me clarify, because I think what Hunter was really talking about was the greater downtown area, if you think about it in those terms. The assessment district that we created, again, through the good work of property owners, and a number of property owners and board members are here, actually goes from East 18th Street to West 10th Street, from the railroad tracks to the north to the river and to the inner belt to the south. That's the assessment district. But having said that, and that's where our clean and safe services are concentrated. But we recognize that really when you think of downtown, we think of a much more expansive definition of downtown. We think of both sides of the flats. We think of really the campus district, for example, to our east, to the inner belt. And again, we've been very proactive in working with our adjoining neighborhoods, whether it's St. Clair to the east, Asian Town to the east, or all the way out to Gordon Square to the west. We know that, again, that's an interrelated trade district that we can take advantage of on a reciprocal basis.
Kerry?
You didn't mention anything about public square. I mean, the young lady from Indianapolis talked about gathering spaces. Can you speak to, I mean, there's nothing more gathering than public square. So can you speak to what public square is going to look like in the future?
Councilman Reed, thank you for that question. Essentially, and again, The Group Plan Commission is very, very active. There's a number of commission members here in the audience. Dan is with us. Essentially, the Group Plan Commission obviously is working with field operations on the design of Public Square. They are about the 50% design point. And I know that field operations will be back in town for another public session very shortly to have a dialogue about their plans for the square. And essentially, what we're thinking of is the plan would call for the closure of Ontario and transforming Superior into a transit-only way, although that final decision is yet to be made from a traffic engineering perspective. And RTA is working closely with the Commission on that point. So the goal at this point in time would be to, Zach, to have that construction actually begin this fall. And if are able to achieve that, we'll have about an 18-month construction period, which, by the way, would mean that public square-related events would need to transition to other parts of downtown, which we're actually planning for right now, and then put us in a position in about 18 months to have a fully renovated square.
To our friend from Indianapolis, and thank you for being here. There's an interesting phenomena in northeastern Ohio, maybe elsewhere. Many of us are very hard on ourselves, and you talked about the fact that you're preaching or singing to the choir here, and you are. But I'm curious in Indianapolis how you sing to those members who aren't in the choir. And typically in northeastern Ohio, those are people who live 15 or 20 minutes away from downtown, are the first to sort of deride our downtown, but haven't been down here in 10 or 15 years. Have you found specific ways to reach out to them and show them all that's great that's going on in Indianapolis?
That's an excellent question, and I'm glad you brought that up. You know, we Midwesterners are just really tough on ourselves. You know, there are so many good things that are going on in this community that are unbelievable. But our own residents, and Indianapolis was in that same camp, our own residents are disbelievers. So we all need to tell our story relentlessly and with a little swagger. You deserve to. But I will tell you what we learned is we could say anything and people would have that same, like, I don't believe it, skepticism. But if someone from out of town came in and said how great Indianapolis was, and that's why the Super Bowl for us was amazingly important to our own residents, because all of a sudden they had a mirror on themselves and they went, hey, we have something to be proud of. So it is an ongoing process, and it takes all of you to play that role and be ambassadors. I mean, really just continuing to, you know, we know downtown's where when you have visiting family and friends, you bring them downtown. You're proud of downtown. Media, when they do their beauty shots, it is of downtown. So it is just, it's a patient process, but you can't give up.
And Tamara, I would add to that, obviously Dave Gilbert of Positively Cleveland is with us. Positively Cleveland, we've been working with them strategically on trying to change the conversation along those lines. And David had his annual meeting last week and unveiled a brand strategy that kind of put us out front on those types of issues. Yeah. And again, I think it's very appropriate and to be back very timely for us to do that.
Excellent. So I'm going to just say before we close here, I'm looking forward to coming back. I haven't been here for several years, and I'm so impressed. I'm looking forward to coming back in June, I think, for the CEO for Cities conference that Lee Fisher here is hosting with all of you. And I can't wait to see the chandelier in Playhouse Square. And I can't wait to see the Center for Health Innovation. I think those two things are just going to be amazing to add to the portfolio of what Cleveland has to offer.
Adam, I'd also add, I was talking earlier about an experience on CPN where one of my suburban elected officials was talking about how downtown's dead on the radio. You simply have to say no. It's the first time I ever did a Fox News talk over because it's just it's wrong. You just tell him wrong. Get in his face, you know.
I have no problem.
Just get in his face. Okay? No, it's time to stop the big lie and say, just come on down. Or you want to stay out there on your 5-acre parcel out there in the middle of nowhere? Fine, stay there. We don't care. Your kids are going to be with us. Your kids are going to be with us.
Hunter, I was on the branding committee. They threw me off. I have a question for her. When I told them just to tell them to shut up.
Tamara, I've been out in Youngstown for 10 years. You got to speak the truth.
Tamara, Mayor, or the governor of Michigan has proposed what us older guys remember as an enterprise zone, but they're calling it an immigration zone. Have you seen that concept where basically when you were in an enterprise zone, as you know, it was a very helpful thing for the cities. And he is designating a substantial part of the state of Detroit, or the city of Detroit, for an immigration zone. So if you come in, you get those benefits. Have you seen that anyplace else? By the way, this is the best governor I've ever dealt with in my life, but that's another story. Yeah.
I am not familiar with that concept yet, but in some ways, if you look at the history of our communities, they're immigration centers because it was a melting pot. So, and we know a lot of our talent, like Eli Lilly and Company, our pharmaceutical, one of our largest employers, will tell you that they depend on a diverse labor force. So again, how do we make this work? But a dedicated zone is interesting. So to answer your question, no, but I will keep my eyes open for it in International Downtown Association.
It should be something that could get, especially in these cities. And he's trying to get it, and he's only doing it in Detroit, obviously, for the obvious reason. Something that should be looked at.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very fascinating.
Excellent. Well, thank you everyone for your questions. And I really appreciate you coming out tonight before Dan, not tonight, this afternoon, or Dan takes my my thunder. But I want to thank the panelists for being a part of our panel discussions today. Joe, thank you. Grandpa Hunter, and Tamara. I really appreciate it.
That's for the Buddha line.
Jason Russell, ladies and gentlemen, he's here all week. I want to mention, too, to all of you, we're with the Downtown Cleveland Alliance and with Zach Brule, actually, and our friends at the Huntington Building. On April 2nd, we'll be hosting a happy hour, a civic drinks happy hour program in the inside the sort of atrium of the Huntington Building. You're all, what's that? It's also called 200 Public Square, but that's not the Huntington Building anymore. That's that's like, what is that, 925 Euclid, right? Anyway, Dan's here. It's the Huntington Building? Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Okay. All right. Anyway, April 2nd, come join us. There'll be, if you haven't eaten at the cafeteria yet, Zach Brule's new dining effort there at his new dining enterprise there, 200 Public at the Huntington Building, 3rd floor. He's going to be catering with all that food. So you guys should be there. You want to be there. Please join us April 2nd. And this has been a great event. Thank you, Jason Russell. Thanks to our panelists. Jason, will you do the honor and ring the gong one last time? And this forum's now adjourned.